Hello, dear audience. My name is Janez Kopac. I'm former director of Energy Community Secretariat, a pan-European organization which has Ukraine as its biggest member as well. This is why I was engaged a lot in my life in Ukraine, and I'm still active there. Today with us is a very interesting guest, Emmanuel Brutin, Secretary General of Nuclear Europe. It's an association of national associations, nuclear associations, including Ukrainian one, and big nuclear companies like French EDF and many others. And this is an organization which has now, I would say, an exciting time because of the nuclear renaissance in Europe. I would be very interested to hear a few related questions or answers on questions related to Ukraine. Ukraine has extensive nuclear infrastructure and experience, a lot of expertise, and also a lot of experience in safety leadership, fuel supply diversification. They switched from Russian nuclear fuel to Western one, strategic planning. How do you see all this expertise of Ukraine to be useful in this current European nuclear renaissance?
Well, I see, thanks for your question, and I see indeed a lot of potential. Actually, I was amazed by all the components that are being used today in EU power plants that actually come from Ukraine. So I was in Kopac in Hungary not so long ago, and I can tell you that quite a large nuclear equipment there actually come from Ukraine. So as you just highlighted, there's huge expertise in Ukraine on nuclear in general, on diversification of fuel specifically. And this fits also extremely well with what we're trying to do in Europe. Of course, you're aware that there is currently a very large number of EU member states planning new investments in nuclear. We're talking about both extending the lifetime of existing plants, building new plants, also developing new technologies such as small modular reactors. So when it comes to the cooperation in Ukraine, I see it in many different ways. It can be on technology, because Ukraine has a lot of experience. They also have a significant investment program. It can be on fuels, and we can say a few more words about it. But it is also, I think, a lot about the nuclear supply chain, because Ukraine has a significant industry. And there will be a need for the European industry as a whole to deliver on the very ambitious investment programs on nuclear from the different EU member states. So I think joining up with the Ukrainian nuclear supply chain would also be important.
Thanks. Still many reactors on the territory of European Union are using Russian nuclear fuel. As I mentioned already, Ukraine switched, and this is not an easy and not a simple process. Is there any discussion ongoing in your organization? Because the European Commission proposed a regulation to get rid of Russian fossil and nuclear fuel. How to approach this process in other EU member states or in other members of your association, and perhaps how to involve Ukraine with its experience in this process?
So, as you said, indeed, this is a very big topic in our agenda, and that's clearly a challenge that some European countries share with Ukraine. You're right that all of the currently installed nuclear reactors in Ukraine are VVER Russian design models. If we take the 100 reactors that we have in the EU, 19 of them are VVER, so dependent on Russian fuel. And very significant steps have already been taken by the European industry to cut the reliance on Russian fuels. But indeed, I think there's a lot also that could be learned from the Ukrainian experience, which is also a very specific one because they had to fasten this process due to the war of invasion conducted by Russia. So I see this as a very strong avenue for cooperation. It is a process to switch from Russian fuels to alternatives. It always takes a bit of time because you need to license a new fuel, which you're using to replace the Russian fuel. But it's also an area where we need very strong support from policymakers to develop our European fuel enrichment capacity as well, so that in the long term, indeed, we can absolutely remove the reliance on Russia. So it is work in progress. As I said, the EU countries have done already quite significant progress. I think the imports of Russian uranium have been now steadily decreasing in the EU. But indeed, we need to do this extra step. We're working with the European Commission, and I think indeed we can also work with the Ukrainian authorities, and there's a lot to be discussed and exchanged in terms of how they've been doing it in Ukraine.
Thanks. Perhaps one more question about the green taxonomy. Green taxonomy regulation envisages that every new investment into a nuclear power plant, if it wants to be labeled as green, has to have two things. So intermediate deposits, which is licensed, okay, that's understandable, but on the long run also deep geological repository. Many European, there are two, as far as I know, Sweden, Finland, and even big countries like France don't have it yet. Ukraine doesn't have it currently, but the explorations were ongoing for decades already. And many countries will face the problem of deep geological repository because they simply don't have such an opportunity on their own territory. So some regional solution or even European-wide solution would be much better. Do you, in your association, discuss these potential regional solutions, and do you see Ukraine, which has biggest gas storage in Europe, perhaps it could have also the biggest deep geological repository in Europe. Do you discuss these questions in Nuclear Europe?
Yes. So of course, when we are discussing the issue of storage and of long-term repository. I was actually last week in Finland visiting the Onkalo site, which is actually a world first. So it is now ready to be operational. I think it's just waiting for the latest regulatory approvals. But it will be the first long-term geological repository in the world. And I was amazed when I visited it. It's an amazing piece of ingenuity and engineering. Just to give you some perspective, when you visit the site, it's actually 433 meters below sea level. You take what is actually the fastest lift in the world, and then you end up in a very, very impressive geological site. And it's fascinating that we're able to do these things in Europe. Now, when it comes to taxonomy and the cooperation between countries, I agree with you. It is very important that we have this cooperation also because reasonably, we cannot expect every EU member state which has nuclear to develop their own repository. I think there will need to be a degree of cooperation between member states. And your suggestion on Ukraine is also an excellent one. I'm not well versed about the possibilities in Ukraine to do this, but I think certainly, given that country's expertise in nuclear, this would be a good idea and certainly something to consider.
Thanks a lot, and a lot of success in your work, and happy to see the developments during this renaissance. Thank you.
Thank you.